All right, I see the doors are closing. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today here for the Pacific Energy Transition session. The title is Challenges, Opportunities and Way Forward, and we hope we touch upon all of them. I think we will have a really diverse set of speakers and panel discussions and cover a range of topics around renewable development, the integration of renewables, what are the policy challenges, what are the measures, the success stories that we've seen across the Pacific, and then also in a later session, how has and how will private sector engagement help Pacific Islands in the development of renewables and along the path of the energy transition. But before we go into all of that, we'll have opening remarks from Mr. Scott Morris, our Vice President for East Asia, Southeast Asia, and in this session, especially important, the Pacific. I think that will be played via video. So please start.
Distinguished guests and colleagues, welcome to the Pacific Regional Session on Energy Transition Challenges, Opportunities, and Way Forward. Thank you for your presence this afternoon, and special thanks to all the speakers and panelists who will share their valuable insights and experiences. While I regret that I couldn't be there in person, I know this session will provide a valuable platform to discuss the challenges and opportunities to accelerate the clean energy transition in the Pacific region. Each country in the Pacific has its own pathway towards the clean energy transition and carbon neutrality. And most countries have set long-term energy plans with ambitious net zero emission targets. At the same time, it is clear that the region's countries will need to work together to achieve their goals. Intra-regional collaboration is essential to enable economies of scale, increase private sector investment, and reduce technology costs. It is also an opportunity for sharing of knowledge, innovation, and lessons learned. This is the very reason we are here today. Pacific small island developing states have been undertaking a structural shift away from fossil fuel-based power generation toward renewable energy and greater energy efficiency. Some countries have highly dispersed populations and continue to face critical challenges in providing electricity to remote islands and rural populations. Other countries have more concentrated populations, but experience high generation costs linked to diesel dependence and associated import costs. No matter their circumstances, all countries can look to energy efficiency and renewable energy combined with energy storage as key solutions to address energy issues. But we also must recognize that these countries confront energy challenges against a backdrop in which the region is facing increasing frequency and intensity of natural disasters. Frequency of weather-associated disasters in the Pacific recorded a threefold increase for the last 5 decades. Chronic cyclones have damaged associated power infrastructure, such as fuel storage tanks, overhead transmission and distribution lines, and substations, which resulted in power interruption and outages. By one estimate, annual economic losses in the Pacific due to disasters have accounted for 5% of combined gross domestic product. In the face of these challenges, energy planners in the Pacific have a clear mandate to increase renewable energy penetration into the transmission grid and to build climate-resilient energy infrastructure. However, the power system in Pacific SIDS continues to face challenges in integrating variable renewable energy power into the grid. Specifically, there is a need to expand and strengthen the transmission grid, build reserve capacity, including battery energy storage systems, and enhance institutional and operational capacity to manage variable renewable energy. Addressing these challenges across the region will require strengthening inter- and intra-regional cooperation, not only in mobilizing finance, but in mutually enhancing institutional and organizational capacity. I hope that this Pacific Regional Session will mark a productive step forward in that sort of cooperation. And let me close by emphasizing that ADB remains a very committed financial and technical partner in supporting clean energy transition initiatives in the Pacific region and across all our regions of operation. Thank you. Distinguished guests and colleagues,
Excellent.
welcome to Pacific
With that,
Regional.
I'm especially happy to be able to welcome our Director General for the Pacific, Ms. Leah Guterres, to join us and give the welcoming remarks. Leah.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. Welcome to ADB and to Manila. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Pacific Regional Session where we delve into the challenges, opportunities, and the path forward in our energy transition journey. This session is a cornerstone of the Asian Clean Energy Forum, highlighting the Pacific economy's pivotal role in addressing climate change. The experiences in our economies bring in valuable insights that benefit not just the Pacific region, but also other regions. The ADB has long recognized the Pacific's unique challenges in combating climate change and advancing energy transition. Factors such as small populations, limited land, geographic dispersion, distance, vulnerability to natural disasters have prompted ADB to adopt a tailored approach. This bespoke strategy is encapsulated in what we call the Pacific Approach, ADB's operational framework for the sub-region, and also the Pacific Renewable Energy Investment Facility, which supports renewable energy projects across the 12 small Pacific Island countries. Beyond project financing, ADB serves as a dynamic knowledge hub, fostering innovation and sharing best practices and lessons learned in climate change and energy transition. This role is crucial in crafting strategies that are not only effective on a national level, but also resonate within the Pacific context. Despite the progress, many Pacific economies still rely heavily on imported fossil fuels. According to the data from the UN SCAP, as of January 2023, fuel imports cost the region an estimated $6 billion annually, accounting for 5 to 15% of each economy's GDP. This dependency presents an opportunity. By transitioning to 100% renewable energy, the Pacific could significantly reduce its reliance on traditional energy sources, potentially saving a substantial portion of its regional GDP. However, realizing these savings hinges on collective action from the region, development partners, the private sectors, and other stakeholders. Today, we are privileged to have esteemed speakers and panelists who will share their perspectives on advancing the Pacific's energy transition. Our agenda includes 4 case studies on energy transition from the energy sector regulator of the Solomon Islands, utilities from Fiji and Tonga, and University of Hawaii. Additionally, we will have 2 panel discussions. The first will examine the challenges and lessons learned from the Pacific energy transition, and the second will explore opportunities and the way forward. I look forward to engaging discussions that will spark new ideas, foster partnerships, and unveil investment opportunities across the Pacific and beyond. I'm looking forward to a very engaging discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leah. With that, a couple of housekeeping rules before I start, and I should have done it in the beginning. My name is Peter Baum. I'm energy specialist for ADB in Papua New Guinea. So I'm also very keen to hear about all the case studies and see what are the lessons learned from other countries and how you've dealt with some of the challenges across the Pacific. In terms of housekeeping, we have a dedicated Q&A session after the break. So any longer questions and comments, please wait with them for later. If there's anything burning that you need to be clarified, just raise your hand and I'll try to call upon you if there's anything that needs to be clarified during presentations or during the panel discussion. But I'm also direct enough to stop you if you start commenting too early already. For the discussions, we'll try to keep it brief. I know there's a lot to talk about, but we'll try to keep it within 10 minutes just because we have a lot of, as Leah said, a lot of esteemed speakers and a lot of really interesting case studies to go through. And I think that's it. Yeah, maybe this is because it is such a long day and a long conference. The break is at 3:35 exactly, if I believe our time plan. So then we get some refreshment and come for the second part. With that, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Joshua Tuasulia, the CFO of Solomon Powers. And he'll be speaking about the experience Solomon Powers, the lessons learned for the energy transition. That please come up to.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Tuasulia, and I'm delighted to be here today to share our experience in the energy transition pathway in the Solomon Islands. I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of this event for providing the opportunity to share our experience with the energy transition. For those of you who do not know where Solomon Island is, we are located in the South Pacific and have 9 provinces across 9 different islands. A brief background of our energy sector. We have a state-owned vertically integrated utility responsible for generation, distribution, and licensing. There's no private sector involvement in the renewable energy except one structured as a public-private partnership, which is responsible to build a hydro power plant of 15 megawatt. We have an installed capacity in the Honiara main grid for around 30 megawatt with 19,000 households. The renewable share is still very low. We only have 3% of renewable energy. 97 is still from fossil. The electrification rate in Honiara is around 67%. In total, we still have less than 50% that has access to electricity in the Solomon Islands. To address our transition, we have started with the legal and policy frameworks. Our Electricity Act is very old, since 1969. So to drive the transition, we have amended last year to allow for renewable and tariff setting process to be oversight by the Ministry of Energy. We have a very ambitious renewable energy targets of 100% renewable by 2050 for the whole of Solomon Islands and 100% renewable share in Honiara grid by 2030. The challenges and actions we have taken in relation to the energy transition. The geographical disperse of Solomon Islands as we are scattered over a vast ocean with around 70% of population still living in rural areas, presenting unique challenges for energy transition, such as the logistical hurdles, infrastructure cost, resource allocation across different remote islands, and land owning issues. Acquiring land for renewable energy projects can be time consuming, especially in the small island state. Land is not readily available. So we have taken various action to address the geographical and land issues. Some of those is we have piloted renewable energy projects with development partners to try and develop decentralized energy solutions, develop suitable O&M models, and develop a model for community benefit sharing in land acquisition processes. The other constraint is the capacity constraint, which we do not have the technical people, legal and financial expertise in the areas of IPP procurement, contract management, and PPAs. So we have taken actions to address these challenges with increasing upskilling of our people in legal, finance, and technical areas. The other challenge that we face is in relation to the financial resources. We need financial resources to procure and implement this renewable energy at pace and at scale to achieve our renewable energy targets. So to overcome the financial constraint, we have seek bilateral and multilateral development partners support. So you could see a range of projects that are currently in pipeline, which is supported by ADB, World Bank, and other development partners, including Australian Infrastructure for Pacific Islands. So those are ongoing. However, with the state-owned enterprise financial constraints, since we are operating under the national debt ceiling, we need other solutions to address this. So one of those is to have reforms and open up the electricity sector. So we have done a number of policy reforms. Some are structural, some are institutional. So the structural reforms include establishment of a new national grid code, looking at unbundling the electricity sector, shortening the tariff review periods, and removal of demand charge from the tariff. Going forward, we have a number of pipeline projects that are ongoing with the development partners, and also to allow grid flexibility to other renewable projects to come online. We have working with other development partners to install utility battery system in the main Honiara grid. We look to further increase the renewable energy share in the generation mix, and then we are working on other policy reforms, including setting up of private partnerships and establishment of the the independent power regulator in the power sector. And also to achieve our targets, we have also engaged with other renewable micro projects in the rural areas that will help us achieve our targets of energizing all of Solomon Islands by 2050. So that's basically covers what we are doing in the renewable energy space in the Solomon Islands. Thank you for your attention.
What's the average cost of 1 kilowatt hour delivered right now?
Thank you for your question. So Solomon Island has one of the highest electricity tariff in the world. So on average, it's around 80 cents to $1 US per kilowatt.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and thanks for taking that question as well. It's very interesting, and also very well done with the time. So we're doing good in that, and we'll have Joshua on the panel later on to go into some of the examples you've mentioned, what you've been doing. But for now, I would like to ask Fatiaki Gibson. He's board director at Energy Fiji Limited, to join us on stage. To share the experience in Fiji and let us know what has worked, what maybe hasn't worked in Fiji. Fatiaki, before becoming board director, has 34 years of working in the power sector, not just in Fiji, but also in Vanuatu, developing hydropower projects and others. And yeah, we are very, very happy to have you here, and off you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Thank you. Bula Vinaka, everyone. Yeah, to start off our presentation from Energy Fiji Limited. Just a quick outline on our presentation. EFL at a glance, the energy production, historical and future plans, and obviously the lessons learned by EFL through its lifespan. So in an overview, EFL is responsible for power generation, transmission and retail of electricity in the larger islands of Viti Levu, Vanua Levu, Ovalau and Taveuni. And like the Solomon Islands, we have over 300 islands, but EFL is mandated to look after the power supply and its transmission and distribution in 4 centers, and there'll be a map later on. Our generation sources come from hydro, from thermal, diesel stations, and we have we have a wind farm, and we also have biomass plants as an IPP, and also from the local timber industry. We have uniform tariff rates, so you know there are cross subsidies that come from the main load centers across to the other 3 centers. Our hydroelectric generation contributes about 50 to 60% of the total electricity demand, and yeah, and in a year of good rainfall, it's basically much a better mix of hydro. And EFL is governed by the Companies Act and is no longer under Public Enterprise Act. So on the right is just how EFL has transitioned from a state-owned enterprise, FEA, which was established under the Electricity Act of 1966, and it's transitioned over and prepared the legal pathway and the divestment that happened in 2021. And now we have a shareholder, that's a Japanese company by SEPCO and JBIC. And they formed a special purpose vehicle company, 7 Pacific. And maybe I can also introduce between 1966 and 2017, we transitioned to renewable energy in the early 70s. And we commissioned the Monosabo hydroelectric scheme in 1983. And I'll show you a graph and the impact of having renewable energy in the mix. So that's that. By the way, when we established that first transition in the early 70s and commissioned the hydroelectric plant in 83, the World Bank and ADB were with us. And ADB continues to be a vital partner in the transition of energy in Fiji from fossil fuel to renewable energies. That's just the value and missions and the framework that we have. I mean, that's basically how it's structured. So, yeah. But this is the area of coverage that EFL is mandated to. You can see there's a big island, Viti Levu, where the international airport is. There's another bigger island on the top, Vanua Levu. And also, you got a small island on the right, that's Taveuni, and one just beside this data box, which is Ovalau. And that's 4 out of the 300 islands that make up all of Fiji. So that's EFL's mandate. Yeah. Later on, we'll have a look at, but the major one is the one at the bottom, Viti Levu. That's where all the developments have been. And maybe at this stage, I'd like to just share a bit that we are now working with ADB on Viti Levu. And there's a small portion with IFC, commercial arm of World Bank. But we have already spoken to World Bank last week, and we asked them to look at Vanua Levu, because the Korean government has already helped us on Taveuni and Ovalau, the 2 small islands. Okay, you might not be able to see the table, but I want you to focus on the graph on the right. You see, when we commissioned the Monosabo hydro scheme, that's renewable energy from the top line, okay? And the fossil fuel is at the bottom. This is starting off at the year 2000. We commissioned that in 1983. Now, you can see the difference in the mix because the demand was low. And that's a lesson for us in the Pacific, that if you sit back and enjoy the gap, it's going to catch up on you. And that's the lesson I want to share today. Right? We cannot, once you develop a renewable energy and it's all renewable and you're enjoying the low production costs, please don't forget that if you are developing tourism, you're developing all other sectors, the demand is going to catch up with you. And that's what's demonstrated there. As you go, you see the blue line. When the gap between the blue and the green is substantial, that's when EFL makes a profit. But you can see the years where the line change over. It's either low rainfall, that's why we cannot run the hydro as much, but that's when we make a loss. Now, the way forward is to make sure that that gap stays far apart. The green line should have a very minimal impact. So that's the challenge EFL has going forward. Okay, so we have some plans of how to meet the growth. You know, the growth we look expecting is at the moment is 1,100 gigawatt hours. By 2035, we expect to have a demand of 1,700 gigawatt hours. That's an additional 600 gigawatt hours to be supplied. Okay. So we got a power development plan, and I know all the other utilities have power development plans that's set for 10 years, reviewed every 2 years. That's what we do. You know, we got to keep our eyes focused on the job at hand, okay? Because once you don't focus, you will lose track. And that demand is going to outstrip your capability to supply. That's key for us, in the Pacific. Because why? We don't have a neighboring country that can supply across the borders to us. I mean, we are spread over the Pacific Ocean. Even to feed power to our smaller islands just in the group is difficult. So those are some of the challenges we face. Okay, so we have some EFL projects that's coming up, and we're looking at partnering with IPP projects. So later on, when we have the Q&A session, we'll be able to share with you some of the lessons we've learned, how we're doing that, how we are working with ADB, for example, to encourage the IPP to come into the energy sector in Fiji. And let's not forget, transmission and distribution, that needs to be also strengthened. Whenever you strengthen your generation sources, you got to evacuate that power from the generation source to the load center. And they are never close by, especially if you're dealing with hydro, if you're dealing with renewable energy. Yeah. So the question that happened, the comment we got yesterday while talking to our ADB colleagues, transition is without, it should be with transmission. So that's the, okay, and these are our renewable projects going forward. We've got a list, and we're working with that with all our partners. And these are all the areas, the other 4 areas. Okay, and the lessons learned, I mean, this is just, okay. I mean, these are just the key points of the lessons we've learned. When it comes to the Q&A session, then we'll be able to elaborate on this and some of the details. But that's what key. The key one is the last one. For us, significant money is needed. Significant money is needed. But I will share to you a way forward that ADB is helping EFL. And surely ADB can help you. But I won't tell you now. I'll tell you later in the Q&A session. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you very much. This was very good. Looking forward to hearing more from you and the lessons learned. We can talk about the financing at another occasion. With that, I'm very, very happy to have Mr. Finau Moa from Tonga join us and share the experiences in Tonga. Finau is the acting chief executive officer of Tonga Power Limited. And Tonga Power is the state-owned utility responsible for generation, network distribution, and retail. Finau has 32 years of extensive experience in the government sector and was with the Ministry of Public Enterprises and has also served as the CEO of Tonga Gas. Very, very keen to hear from you, and thank you very much for joining us.
First of all, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Asian Development Bank for the excellent organizing of this important annual event and for us to participate. Go straight to the overview of my presentation. We'll address the overview of Tonga Energy Roadmap, the reality of Tonga Energy Roadmap transition, and our next step forward. The Tonga Energy Roadmap, the TEM for short, was established in 2010, in which government priority in providing a sustainable and resilient energy sector to Tonga through investments in sustainable, clean energy source of renewable energy, and also ensure grid resilience in enabling project. In 2021, the Tonga Energy Roadmap, the TEM, changed to Tonga Energy Roadmap Plus. So what are the major deliverables of TEM and TEM Plus? We are trying to achieve 50% renewable by 2020, but now we're expecting to get 70% by the end of 2025. Not only that, but we have to reduce the line loss from 28% to less than 13% by 2020. Maintain electric tariff by $1 and below. and increase access to electricity and increase the network resilience to inclement weather events such as tropical cyclones. In this slide, you can see the overview of Tonga Grid in 2010 before introducing any renewable energy to the power in Tonga. So what you can see from here, the power supply for all 4 major islands in Tonga were traditionally produced by diesel-generated power only. What we get from that, very easy to operate. Moving on to the next slide. So this slide shows our grid in 2024. What you notice there, a hybrid and complex energy mix with its diesel-generated power, solar, wind farm, battery storage, and IPPs. Then what we experience, we face challenge in our network. In this graph, it shows that the overall Tonga's electricity production has been growing by nearly 5% annually for the last 10 years. So what is the reality of Tonga Energy Roadmap as of 2024? The dam set the target in 2010 to achieve 50% of renewable energy by 2020. In 2024, only 21 to 22% renewable energy achieved, and 78 to 79% diesel generated monthly. Why? Why the target is not achieved? Intermittent renewable energy, undersized battery, renewable energy sites underperformance. So when we come to 2020 to 2024, it's only 13 megawatt renewable energy installed capacity. The dam also wants us to reduce line loss to less than 13%. So in 2024, we achieve 8 to 9% line loss and sustained. We reduced the connection of both cyclones from 1 month to 1 week. Reduced the monthly fault from an average of 75% to an average of 5 to 6% monthly. Moving on, we are able to complete 10 renewable energy projects and 2 projects in the pipelines, which include a 20 megawatt solar and 50 megawatt battery, and this one is an IPP project. So in 2023-24, the renewable energy penetrations had an average of 22%, and we reached a 27% current peak of renewable energy penetration. So in this slide here, it's provide the reality of an overview of our progress when we started our renewable energy journey from 2012. The expectation in that time that we will increase the renewable energy per year, or we will experience a linear graph. But you see the result, it's up and down, it's fluctuated. Why? Why did that happen? Because the government goal of 50% renewable energy did not take into account the technical challenges faced by Tonga Power Limited with renewable energy, and also the intermittency of solar and wind in Tonga. So what we learned from here, that the transitions to renewable energy requires integrated resource planning, a balanced transitions in all aspects of power generation, the network distribution, assets management planning for diesel genset, solar, wind, and BESS, and the power generation control center technology, facility upgrade, network distribution upgrade, and strengthening. So in this slide here, it shows the network upgrade and enabling project progress. So with the help of TONA, led by ADB, we thank here for the ADB, for the completions of 9 network upgrade and 4 network upgrades and 1 enabling project in progress, which is our grid enhancements of sustainable transition project by the assistance of Citra from the ADB. So moving on to slide 11, the questions is coming to mind in the Pacific. So how do we ensure sustainability of the energy transition? How do we ensure a fair and just energy transition here in the Pacific? So the challenge that we are facing, the quadrilemma challenge of low carbon transition. That is a worldwide target that we are moving to decarbonizing. So when we move to decarbonizing, are we providing affordable electricity, a cheaper tariff? And also at the same time, we're providing a reliable, resilient grid. How about the social impact? The people in the community, they are very loud. They want power to be affordable, to be cheap. So the question, if we reduce the price of the electricity to very cheap, are we able to provide our grid to be resilient, reliable at the same time? So the stakeholders, us, the government, and also the Department of Energy must only have one word with no finger point to each other. So the traditional energy source upgrade is also an essential for energy transition. So when we experience the operations of diesel generations, do not underestimate the importance of upgrading the aging diesel genset, of integrating renewable energy. So Tonga Power Limited is grateful for the Government of Australia for their contributions of a new state of art gensets, and we still need fund for this area. Not only that, we have a 33 kV grid strengthening, like what I said earlier, and also human resource challenge. And the last one, a challenge we always face at every time is the renewable and the smart grid development countries. So when we agree to renewable energy is a way forward, we must expedite our transitions to a smart grid technology. How? We are trying now to automate our operability for power generations and distribution systems. Mini-grid O&M for the outer island, the extreme events. As for us, we experience that we cannot plan for everything. We cannot plan for cyclone, we cannot plan for eruption, and for COVID. So it's very important for that one. So construction support consultancy is very important to be maintained up to commissions and O&M of any project. Malo opito.
Thank you very much to all the presenters, and thank you, Finau, for this. I think there were a lot of already good lessons to see in the first 3 presentations. I took away asset management is an important one. I mean, you mentioned transmission with transition, no other way around. That also accompanies the development of renewables. And I think in your presentation, what I found very, very good was you also showed the social dimension and how hard it can be, the political coordination behind it. With that, I'm very happy now that we go to a panel and we have a very diverse set of speakers from not just different countries, but really also different functions in the energy sector, from the utilities to the ministries and the regulator. So to start, I'd like to call Joshua back up on stage and Fatiaki to come back on stage. And they will be joined by Marivenua Tirata, he was the Assistant Secretary at the Ministry of Infrastructure and Sustainable Energy in Kiribati, and by Silati Timo, who is the Assistant Secretary at the Ministry of Transport, Energy, Communication and Innovation at Tuvalu. And then lastly, by Kembo Mida, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Chuk Public Utility Corporation and of the Association of Micronesian Utilities, joining us from the Federated States of Micronesia. So, thank you everyone for joining me on stage today. I want to start in Kiribati and ask Nua about the challenges that that Kiribati has faced in developing renewable energies, but also in the ways, the solutions you found, and especially as someone representing the ministries, what the government has done to help address these challenges.
Thank you, Peter, for the invitation, and I also thank the ADB for the kind invitation, and I'm very honored to be part of the panel discussion. And of course, I'm the Marivenua Sunema from the government representing Kiribati from the its government agency known as the Ministry of Infrastructure and Sustainable Energy. So yeah, just talking about speaking from Kiribati, it's we all know it's a natural nation and it's considered as one of the most vulnerable yet resilient island nation to climate change on Earth. And in Kiribati, we have around 100,000 population, and the bulk of this population resides on South Tarawa, that is the capital region of the Kiribati. And yes, like any other small island developing states, like Kiribati, it's heavily depends on imported oil products. So yes, speaking strategically, in Kiribati, we have policies and plans in place to set up we have I was setting priorities that includes energy targets to achieve SDG 7 by 2020, and NDC by 2025, and Kiribati fossil fuel use targets. And to highlight some of the energy targets set to the development of the KIA, the Kiribati Integrated Energy Roadmap, and by 2025 with a fossil fuel reduction goal by 45%, that is for South Tarawa, of which 23% in the renewable energy and 22% for the energy efficiency. Yes, and we have, to achieve these targets, we have the Kiribati government through MISA, we work according to the national level policies and plans, and that includes the KB20, the KDP 2022 to 2023, and we have the KIA, like I've mentioned before, and the KNEP, we have the Kiribati National Energy Policy, and the Energy Act. That is the recently acted act that we have, and yes, with these hacks, it would enable private sectors to participate in electricity sector through renewable energy projects. And yes, sorry, coming back to the question, the challenges that we face in Kiribati is that to highlight some of the challenges is one is the technical capacity challenges. We're proud to say we have qualified engineers, but yet they lack the exposure to advanced technology in installing, maintaining and operating these systems. And yeah, Also the availability of the technical equipment, that is one of the challenges that we face, and public awareness with the high cost of renewable energy sources and with no current incentives in place for these systems, such as subsidies through that lead the public to continue to rely on fossil fuel usage. And also on the financial challenges, it has that, like I mentioned before, Kiribati is heavily dependent on imported materials and with from international market, and considering its remoteness from these markets is a disadvantage, and as the price is quite high in terms of freight and other logistics costs. And yes, what are the opportunities, like how the government address these challenges? Like I've mentioned before, we have policies and plans in place, and this can be reflected from the ongoing or the major project that we have, that is the South Tarawa Renewable Energy Project. And this project is the ADB sponsored, and we have it, and sorry. Yes, this project incorporates provisions to establish clear energy sector through institutional responsibilities or modernize existing law, and the enhance renewable energy and deployment, energy efficiency, develop and improve regulations. And we also have the South Tarawa Water Supply Project. This is one of the ADB sponsored water supply project with the renewable energy component of 2.5 megawatt peak installed capacity and 0.5 megawatt hour storage capacity. And yes, the ministry is also through the ministry, we are also joining hands with development partners through other projects such as Boidia, KIREP, and the Koitip. That is, these projects are from the working with the outer highlands, and to improve marine infrastructure, water and sanitation infrastructures, along with access to renewable energy. And I guess that's just to highlight some of the ongoing projects that we have to highlight this, to address these challenges. And back to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Nuya, and we'll come back to some of the impacts or the benefits of the projects later on. Now I would like to turn to you, Silati, in Tuvalu. Do you want to? Can you talk about successful renewable projects where you found workable solutions and that have had success in Tuvalu? And also, I know you mentioned in the discussion that also how you've worked with development partners and your experiences there.
Thank you, Peter. Talofa. Thank you, ADB, for the invitation. For ADB, we have the increasing access to renewable energy projects currently ongoing. So it has, it's still in its phase 1 now. So it just, the 3 components is to build capacity, strengthening institution capacity. So to have the support for the project management units. So they have their new office now, and the installation of solar PVs. So they have a contractor, CPS, coming from Fiji. They've gone to outer islands, like 3 outer islands, to build up structures and put on solar panels, and even batteries. So for phase 2, they're gonna invest in floating solar PV. As we know, even in the earlier presentations in the Pacific Islands, even especially in Tuvalu, we are so vulnerable to the effects of climate change, sea level rise. Only 26 square kilometers. You stand in the middle of the capital where I'm from, Funafuti, you see the ocean and the lagoon. So you can imagine how vulnerable we are. Renewable energy, the development partners, multilateral banks like ADB, World Bank, have invested their focus really on solar PVs and floating solar, because we have a limited space. So the focus now is to do floating solar So you go to the ocean or lagoon and install the solar panels there because we are so small, even though there's some reclamation going on, but it might take time. But for now, I'm grateful that ADB and World Bank has invested in that. We have another renewable energy called the biogas, and I think this has been covered in other Pacific Islands as well. This has been successful earlier this year, and the involvement of women, because they just, I mean, they are cooking, like not from gas, but from biogas. It's a lot of effort. It's good, like when you have boys in the household, like to help the mother, like with the process. But yeah, it's worth the effort. So it's basically like I talk to mom because I'm from the ministry, so I'm from the senior management team. So I'm not really technical, but I've talked to moms and household, mostly are women, like the beneficiaries of this project. And they were saying, wow, we are saving a lot. Like they don't have to buy gas now. In Tuvalu, it's like $80 for a gas cylinder, 80 Australian. So that's really costly. And we know after COVID, there's inflation. So they're saving a lot. So this is, it's good to hear, like they were saying, when this project finish, can other development partners pick it up and continue from there? So I think this is a good platform, and actually my first time to attend ASEF here in ADB. Thank you for the opportunity once again. And this is something, and I believe there's some development partners sitting here in the room. Why not pick up from there and continue with phase 2, phase 3, or moving to out islands? Because we know the accessibility and even the shipping to out islands, it's very unreliable. So those are the two successful projects so far. And ADB, that's a big one. So it's still going on phases now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I like the highlighting the need for assistance in this. This is a very good stage for this. Now, turning to Micronesia, the Federated States of Micronesia, and Cameroon as a utility representative, I wanted to ask a question a little bit more on the technical side of integrating renewables. What has been the challenges in developing them, but also in the integration in your grids across the islands? Yeah.
Thank you,
Hand over
Peter.
to you.
Thanks for the question. We actually have an ongoing World Bank project now. Our grid is very small. Our peak load is 2.5 megawatts, and the World Bank is preparing to fund a 2 megawatt solar farm. This was several years ago. We had some issues with that because there's no battery storage. As you guys, 2.5 peak without any battery. So we went back to the World Bank and asked if we could reshuffle things. So now it's a 1 megawatt solar with some batteries in it. We also asked the World Bank if they can take a step back and help fund a grid stability study, but also a tariff review. We wanted to see the technical requirements and also what the tariff would look like, whether we can influence our customers with the solar. So we made some changes. We are running into some issues with the design. Our cables are not big enough, so we're looking at different ways to bring the energy from the solar farm without having to change out our cables. We're still working out the technical specs on that. We're fearful to get 2 megawatts without batteries, but now there's been an adjustment. So this project has started and it's been bidded out. It's 5 years behind because of COVID, and that's caused a lot of issues with increased cost of goods and services. So still ongoing. It's in the works right now, Peter.
Thank you very much. And I think this is one of the themes really important, that it's not just the development of renewable power generation, but also grid, the efficiency, technical losses, or as you mentioned, storage. I wanted to open that question to other panel members because I know that there are experiences in other countries. Anyone wants to comment on that? Yes, please. Challenges, or we're always also happy for success stories.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, for the challenges, we don't have the policies, so that's something. One, first of all, we have a new government just came into office. earlier this year on February the 28th. That's still fresh in my mind. So we have a new government, and it's good to have that political will or that political support from our leaders. Put it as a priority and be vocal at the international arena and asking for, like, don't be shy and ask for development partner support. So first of all, we need the financial resources, as it happens to all Pacific Island countries, because if there's no money, if there's no funds available, we can't put this into place. So yeah, we need the support from our leaders. We need the financial resources. We need the legislation. So we have the energy bill still in its process to submit to Parliament. So that's it's probably take time to get through, but probably end of the year. So having all these legislations in place, having the capacity in place, will definitely solve the problem. Another challenge that we find in Tuvalu is the maintenance. Like whenever we build something, it's easy. Like, yeah, get the contractor, come to Tuvalu and put it, put up the project, put it in place. But then when the building runs down or the battery is not working, oh my Lord, like it just like maintenance, just leave it there. They'll be like, okay, it's not working. So I think we need the expertise, or we need development partners to mobilize the TA and come and stay in Tuvalu at least 5 to 10 years. Because just to train the locals. They said, okay, we're just here for 2 weeks. We go back home. You can read the manual and yeah, that's it. But I don't really know. I think it's an island. It's very spoon feeding, but I think it's good at least 2 years. I have TAs I've been working with at least 2 years in Tuvalu. So, and you get to know the context because, you can talk like we do Zoom meetings, like virtual meetings, but you haven't been to the islands yet. So yeah, there's a big difference to come and see it in person. So I think those are the gaps for now, strengthening institutions. So that's including capacity, having the TAs or the experts in the field, engineering, mechanical engineering, coming to the islands. And secondly, the strong political support from our leaders, given that we have the new government coming in office earlier this year. And then building that enabling environment, infrastructure, everything. And that's another way to attract investors coming. Okay, we are willing to invest in Tuvalu because like we have created that enabling environment for them.
Thank you, Selati. I hear a lot. I think need for support, but also this. I think this is really one of the challenges across Pacific countries, that it's not enough to have a Zoom call. You need to have people there to build up the capacity to support. And I think that's something we see in other countries as well. With that, I also want to go back to the Solomon Islands, because we learned a lot in the presentation from Joshua earlier. And one thing that I picked up in the presentation and thought is very interesting was I'd like to learn more about is for power projects and infrastructure projects in many of the Pacific countries, land is a big issue. And you mentioned something earlier on how you address this problem, but I would like to give you a bit more space to tell us about it. Again, the challenges and the approach you've chosen.
Thank you. Land acquisition for renewable energy projects is indeed a complex and sensitive issue for us in the Pacific. I think given we do not have that vast amount of land. However, we have successfully tested a land acquisition model for our hydro project, which is now being implemented after multiple attempts to negotiate with landowners. Prove unsuccessful. The government has exercised its authority to compulsory acquire land and provide the affected communities with benefits. So I think it's a compulsory acquisition, and providing the right benefits to the landowners who are willing to give up their land is important.
Thank you. Especially the element of customary land. I think we see this in PNG in Solomons, to find the right approach for that. I think we could fill a whole hour with you telling us about the process in detail. But we want to go around and see different experiences. Going now to Fiji, Fatiaki. Thank you again for the presentation. One thing I take away from the presentation, in Fiji, you have strong participation of the private sector in the energy sector. So I'd like to hear why has it worked? What has worked? How did you approach it?
Thank you, Peter. In the Fiji context, I mean, the panelists have already covered, some of the issues we face. We do have land issues. We do have technical capacity issues, and installation of a new project and its operation maintenance thereafter. But I think our success has come from the political will to include investors into the energy sector, and that's for any other sector that is in Fiji, whether it's tourism. But in the energy, we opened it up quite a long time back when EFL was still a state-owned energy company called FEA. And we invited independent power producers to come and develop renewable energy, for that matter, because EFL or FEA at the time was managing the hydro, the thermal and the wind. So there was an opportunity for a biomass company to come in, and we engaged our local entities who could do biomass, like the Fiji Sugar Corporation on an IPP model. While it was in its infancy, nothing is perfect. We've continued to work on it and continue to tinker with the power purchase agreements. And I think at this stage, EFL is ready to embark on more players in the IPP, especially in the solar. That is one area that we are moving into. And we thank the ADB for coming alongside EFL and helping us in the way forward, given that it is a new generation source for Fiji. Yeah. And there was always a hesitancy about having solar connected to the grid because of the grid stability. There was some apprehension in case a cloud came over and blackened the solar and cause instability in the grid. I mean, those initial ones, but with the advancement of technology, with more know-how, and surely with ADB's expertise being rendered to EFL and also to all the utilities in the Pacific, I mean, we gain confidence. And from the investors' perspective, not only is the legislation enabling that, and the invitation to come to Fiji to participate in the energy sector or any sector, but I think one of the key things from an investor's perspective, and this is my thoughts, I'm not an investor, but when the big players like ADB, World Bank, come into the equation, that gives a confidence to the investor and the assurance, because we notice that when the multilateral funding agencies are with us, we tend to attract big investors, especially in the solar that we are recognizing now. Thank you.
Fatiaki, a quick question. Is that when the likes of ADB or the World Bank fund, or is this also about the process of I don't know if you tender or how you go about procuring these?
Yeah, it's also on funding, but I guess the procurement process, because it is, I mean, I'm very aware of the ADB procurement process. It is it's a process that is fair. It's a process that, attracts, just decides, these are the men and these are the boys I mean, it's straightforward. Yeah? Everybody who's done ADB or World Bank procurement guidelines separates the men from the boys. Simple. So if you're a man out there, an investor, you get confident. I'll be in the game because this is a fair process. Okay? So not only in the funding, not only in the procurement process, but also that is what's driving the investor to be confident to come to this part of the world. Okay? But I think another step, and I'll share it now. I mean, we are working with ADB, and the government of Fiji asked ADB to help us to do a renewable energy integration investment plan. ADB gave us a consultancy team. We were able to put together an investment plan. You know, when you're a consultant, you're running after government. Sorry to my panelists, you have to chase them because they need, at the end of the day, your government department or Ministry of Finance has to sign off on that investment plan. And there are timelines that we have to keep. This is, I know, but this is a good story. At the end of the day, we were able to meet SHIF, Climate Investment Fund's timetable. The result, 31.5 million US available to Fiji through the SHIF. And I thank the ADB because the ADB got us a team of consultants that we were able to achieve that. Now we're going into the next phase. Good enough when they give you money, but now you have to do the, the preparatory PPG to get even the TA out. But that's a good story, and that's very concessional funds. Even the ADB guys tell me it's even the interest rates and the grace period is even lower than ADB's guidelines. So why not? And that's what I want to offer to this session this evening.
Thank you, Phatiak.
Partner with ADB.
Phatiak, thank you very much. We'll hear more in the second panel also on private sector. So I want to move on a little bit. Nuea, going back to Kiribati, we've talked about let's say the success and the challenges in developing renewables and especially solar PV, also replacing, I think you said this as a strategic goal, replacing diesel imports. Could you talk a little bit about really the impact of solar development in Tuvalu, in Kiribati, pardon me, and on its economy, but also more broadly?
Thank you for the question, Peter. And speaking from the Kiribati context, the development of solar PV to replace diesel in Kiribati significantly impact Kiribati in terms of improving the livelihoods of our Kiribati people. That is with the ongoing project that we have, the South Tarawa Water Supply Project and the South Tarawa Water, South Tarawa, the Renewable Energy Project. And with this project, there's for the South Tarawa Water Supply Project, we have the 8 desalination plant that will be in place at Peso Village, and this which is will expected to produce water in March 2024, and it will commence on the 90-day trial period before full commissioning certificate is issued. So this will increase the accessibility to safe and reliable water supply services on a 24/7 basis, and to every household on South Tarawa and on the Pota. And talking about the cost savings, the operational costs of the solar PV are minimal and compared to the ongoing cost of diesel that we're currently facing in Kiribati, and maintenance for diesel generators, leading to long-term cost savings for Kiribati. And also in the job creation, this developing solar PV can create jobs in manufacturing and installation, maintenance, and other related sectors for our people and community. Like for instance, with the SREP project that we have, we engage our local contractors to work on the installation phase, and that is can create job opportunities for our community. And the next one is on energy access. Like with solar PV, it helps in expanding the accessibility to electricity and improve the livelihoods of our Kiribati people, especially for those who have no access to electricity. And for instance, there's an ongoing activity that we have done, and it's still ongoing now, and we have distributed solar kits, like solar lights for the outer highlands, and so that they will have a easy access to renewable energy. That is one of our ongoing activities that is being done right now. And considering Kiribati as one of the vulnerable nations to climate change on Earth, and the development of solar PV will help in combating climate change, and as with solar PV, we can provide benefits in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Also, Silati, if you want to add anything to this, we've discussed this a little bit as well, but no pressure. And we might have time later to also mention what is needed from development partners.
I haven't touched much on the opportunities for Tuvalu investing in renewable energy. It creates innovation and that sense of ownership because and more awareness, like consultations or through radio or TV and all other medium of communication through social media. It really empowers and changes the mentality and the behavior, because people will be like, okay, we really have to build resilience. How? Because it's like our everyday vulnerability. King tides, it's like king tide, and then we get to see, even when it rains, and then king tides together, it's just like inundated. And then we see soil erosion, it's happening. So we get to experience it every day. So it's affecting the livelihoods and our lives in Tuvalu. So just talking from the opportunities perspective on how to turn this into opportunity, we really have to build the capacity and have that sort of changing mentality among the citizens. They'll be like, okay, how to build resilience, really have to go renewable, 100% renewable with our sustainable development plan. Tekete, we call it Tekete by 2030, which is the same life as the SDG goals, to hit 100% renewable. So how to achieve that? So I think without the people, we need to educate our citizens, because they are the ones who experience it every day. And once they understand, okay, we have to phase out from fossil fuels. So this is like, has to be rolled out in our awareness for the ordinary citizens to understand. And they'll build resilience. They'll be like, okay, let's go for renewable energy. We'll support or whatever the government is trying to achieve. So have that collaboration and partnership with relevant stakeholders, and buying the support from the communities, we will make a big difference, because they will support our policies, and yeah, that's another effective way to really phase out from fossil fuels.
Thank you for this. Thanks a lot, Silati. This is a really good point, that to communicate this also to the population, what the benefits are, and let's say sometimes it's not always an easy path to go through. Looking at Micronesia now, looking at the map, I'm always fascinated. I think it's 500, 600 islands. Okay. We heard a bit about what you do, Kembo, on what you do on the bigger islands, or what the successes were. What I was interested in is how you, as, let's say, a small island or big ocean state, I think this is both really fits well. How do you serve communities on the smaller, more remote islands? And what have the experiences been? I think there are probably some challenges, but how have you addressed it and thought about this?
Thank you, Peter. Chuuk has 40 islands, and a range of 600 kilometers. Our population is 50,000, so we have 40 mayors, we have 40 islands with schools, churches, medical dispensaries, small mom and pop stores. Our access to energy rate is only 30%, so a majority of our population doesn't have energy today. But we do have grants to light up 16 of these islands. We have around $70 million from the ADB, World Bank, and EU. But we are a very small utility, just 100 employees. So you can imagine running the day-to-day operation while dealing with all of this grant. We have to deal with, and these are the challenges, politics. We have to deal with mayors, governors, state senators, president, congressmen. All the politicians want their islands to be lighted up so they can get back into their seats. Another challenge is we lack transportation to get out to our islands. If we can't get to your island, we can't electrify your island. We're talking about 15 hours one way on a ship, and it's not a 5-star ship here. It's a rusted old ship. Land is another issue. My background is I'm a lawyer. I handled a lot of land issues before becoming the CEO 6 years ago. With our land issues, people lack title, lands are disputed, lack of surveyors. The other thing is migration. Migration is a big challenge for us. You may do surveys today of an island that has 200 households, take 2 years to do a project, you only have 100 houses left. How are you going to recover your costs and maintain your system? So this is moving on to just the benefits or things that have worked for us. The main thing is you have to keep the main island stable. So good generation, good distribution. In Chuuk, our efficiency rating on our generators, 15 kilowatts per gallon. Our power loss is 7 or 8%. Our revenue fully pays for expenses, including depreciation of assets. If you can't maintain the main island, you have no business expanding out. The second thing that really helped us is a strong public outreach community program. You really have to go down to the grassroots. This is not one meeting every 3 months at the governor's auditorium. You got to go to the communities where you got 15 to 20 ladies and kids. Most people aren't going to come to conferences. So you got to have a very aggressive and transparent public outreach. The other thing is you have to have the ability to survey your islands and people. This has to be driven by locals. I'm a local from Chuuk. A foreign CEO is not going to get on a vessel, go 15 hours out and survey the people in the island. So it has to be locally driven. The final thing I'll end on is you got to think outside the box when you secure lands. What we did in Chuuk is we came up with what's called a benefit share. And I gave a presentation on this last year, the PWWA. Basically, you offer a lease agreement, but this is on the water side, for every 1 million gallons we sell, we give the landowners a share of the money at the end of the year. So we audit the account and we give the landowners the money. And you change the mindset of the people. They become stakeholders. So at the end of the year, they're waiting for the check in addition to their lease agreement. And we also put in an inflation clause to meet the inflation challenges. So the benefit share has allowed us to secure 99% of our lease agreements for water, but we want to transition this into power. For every kilowatt we sell, we're going to give back to the landowners. And this has solved most of our problems for our land issues. So I think for smaller island countries, the benefit share will be something very beneficial because our lands are very limited and you need, for solar, you need the land. So you got to think outside of the box. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really insightful to hear the many challenges you face in this, but how you are able to address them going forward. Now, going back to Fiji, to Fatiaki. Question: we have many ADB colleagues, but also other development partners listening today, and I thought, as a representative of a utility, what do you see as the challenges, but where can development partners step up, or where's the more support needed? Or again, always happy to hear about things that have worked very well.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I guess where our partners can come in and work with us is in the funding of this renewable energy transition. And that's the reality in this part of the world, that unless the utility has a solid base of customers or has a strong balance sheet, it'll be very difficult to get funding from your local bank, for example. So that's where I see the partners have the biggest impact. I always say to myself that, and even shared with some of my colleagues, that there are plenty of factors to get a project successfully completed. But there are three key, like a three-legged stool. One is the land. Two is the engineering, the technology you want. And the third one is the money. You might have the first two, but you have no money, you can't do anything. So that's the message I have for our partners. And if you can get even concessional funding, that would be a big advantage for the Pacific utilities. Okay? I mean, we just heard from our friends from the FSM, migration, customer numbers are dropping. Yeah. How do we get a tariff that is financially sustainable for the utility, but at the same time, we are mindful of the social implication of having a high tariff. For the business to be able to be financially viable, as Joshua will know, CFO for Solomon Islands, it has to have a tariff that is, looking after his expenses and everything. Yeah. Because, in the Pacific, utilities, especially in the energy sector, it's not about profitability all the time. It's about having a reliable and available power supply, because it drives the economy for the nation. Education, tourism, you name it, manufacturing. The energy sector plays a very key and vital part in the development of the small island developing states. So I'd like to conclude with that. Money is the key we need. If we cannot run it from within our own utility, from our own customers, then where else can we get money? But to say, Mr. ADB, please come and help us. Mr. World Bank, you can look after this area. And that's what we strategically done in Fiji. The World Bank came 2 weeks ago and said, where can we participate in the energy sector? We said, okay, on the big island, we've got ADB and IFC. But there's another big island that's still clear. But you've given $200 million US for tourism. If you develop the tourism, where's the energy to drive the tourism? So we'll give you the energy work to do it. So you just look after the whole island and tell us, what can we develop? We'll talk about the funding later. So that's at the end of the day, it boils down to what my friend Joshua will say, dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Fathiaki. I hear the message of the dollars, but I think you point to another really good point. But it seems for you to be very obvious. You are directing where you know your needs. You have good planning in place, and if I understand correctly, you were also a project director, so the engineering is also in place. So a lot of these elements are needed that you might not be pointing at right now. But that's yeah. Thanks for the explanation. Before we go to a break soon, I wanted to ask a question starting out in the Solomons with Joshua. We'll meet again in 5-6 years, ACEF 2030. What would you like to be able to present 2030 about the development of the power sector in the Solomons?
Thank you. I think one of the challenges that we face is we have a low electrification rate with less than 40% of the population still haven't have access to electricity. So, and then most of these people are living in the rural areas. So I think one of the things that I would want to see developed is some innovative solutions that we can actually accelerate renewable energy solutions to these rural communities. The other challenge that we also have is we have the targets of electrification by 100% for Honera grid. So how we are addressing that is the hydro construction that is underway will contribute around 60 to 70% of energy for the main grid. So I think having the project completed within the next 5 years will be a win-win solution for us, and then that would hopefully address the question that one of the guests have raised earlier, that we need to reduce our tariff price. So hopefully with the innovative solutions and the projects that are in the pipeline will hopefully reduce our tariff by that time.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that. I see we have a couple of minutes left before we go out for break and a bit of refreshment. We have time for two questions from the audience. If you please step up to the microphone and if you could briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Evan Woolard from DNV. We're a technical advisor for solar and renewable energy projects. One of the kind of key themes that I heard, over the period of time from the panel was around constraints on land, which is, obvious given the land constraints you have in the island nations. And some of the themes you talked about were lack of land or challenges with acquisition or even forced acquisition of land. I'm kind of curious, the madam from Tuvalu highlighted a little bit around floating solar and what she's thinking about for her nation on floating solar. But have any of the other panelists considered this? Do you have any projects kind of in the works? And if you can kind of share a little bit, if you have any thoughts, if any, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Then we take two. Otherwise, we'll start with this one.
You want me to answer that? Yeah. Okay. I'd like to share the context that we had in Vanuatu in terms of acquisition of land for the Vanuatu Energy Access Program funded by ADB. The issue that they couldn't work out who was the rightful customary landowner. And that sets back your project because you haven't got the land yet. Anyway, the solution was we got them all together, all the customary landowners, and got them to agree that we will assess the compensation required, which is full state government acquisition, and we will park it in a customary landowners trust account. So they can have their own process to resolve who was the rightful landowner and allow the project to progress. I mean, that's just an option of how we can deal with this. Because if not, the Pacific region, you either have no land or your landowners doesn't want to part with the land. But my partner from FSM, that's a good formula too, when you get the landowner to participate in the development. And that's what's happening in Fiji, whether it's a tourism development or any other development, they want a stake in the development. And they say, our contribution is the land. But coming back to the Vanuatu context, we've already commissioned the project. That money still stays in Kota, and they will have to go to they call it the CMLA, or the people who look after the land and ownership, and you have to say, my great-grandfather was this and all that. Once you get your green certificate, you go back to the Kota and you say, okay, this is my green certificate. I'm the rightful owner. Whatever is due for me is then released to you. But that's how we pack it to the side so the project and development can go on. Now, in this place in Malikula, when you run that hydro station, the diesels go to sleep. And that's for 2048. This hydro station will be able to cover for the demand unless there's a big tourism influx and the demand grows exponentially. Okay, so that's just one good story I wanted to share.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the. Before we close, anyone else wants to comment?
Thank you, Peter. So I just want to share the model that we have in the Solomon Islands. So through the compulsory acquisition, the government has structured and established a company together with the landowners. So there's 50% shareholding by the government and the landowners. So so the new company form now has the land title under the company. So that gives the investors confidence to work with this new entity. And at the same time, the company receives annual lease payments from the developers. So that would also go towards assisting the landowners who have given up their land. And additionally, through the community benefit sharing scheme, we have also received donor support to assist these communities, either those communities living downstream or upstream, to provide them with water tanks, because obviously they will lose their water supply or the river through the project. So we have done that, and also we have assisted them with free electricity connections and distribution network right to their communities. So I think we find that works. I think other countries have their own model, but we can always learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. And then Silati, a brief comment, and we go to the break.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to respond to the question from the gentleman. That will be in the phase 2 of the IREP project, increasing access to renewable energy. Phase 2 will cover the floating solar PV. And I think if it is successful, why not go for it? Because we are very limited, we have limited space. And that's the best option I would go for. For now, the penetration of a renewable to the mix is 19%. So it can hit the target by 30. The government should go for it. There's no other option. And more feasibility studies from scientists, like to explore other renewable energy sources, like from the ocean. Hydrogen or ocean waves, anything that to hit the target, that's fine, because the focus now is to phase out from fossil fuel. And that's what we want. And honestly, when you guys come to Tuvalu, we experienced this heat wave. It's crazy. It's like burning your skin. And yeah, and I think all these causes from fossil fuels. So how to reduce carbon footprint, greenhouse gases. I think these are the best options, and we trust ADB, and with the experts, we have missions coming to Tuvalu every now and then, and I thank the ADB mission that are focusing in Tuvalu for their experts. We're just relying on them, and then we have that trust already built. So why not go for it if it is successful? Thank you.
Thank you, Silati, and we'll pass on the compliments to the colleagues. We will have a Q&A session after the break. We have another, I think, 15 minutes dedicated to that. If I could ask you to hold off, all the panelists as well as the presenters will be on stage for that. Now, let's take a break. Eat a little, get a little sugar and a bit of water or coffee, and then we'll see you back in, I think, 28 minutes. 5 past, please. Maybe we have lost them, or they might still join us. But oh yes. Okay, but that gives you, the audience, enough time to gather your thoughts. And if you have any questions for the panels or on the presentations, please step up to the microphone. And If you could introduce yourself briefly, and that would be great, and then ask. You can ask all panelists at one, or if you have a specific question, then please mention that as well.
Are we waiting or can we start?
We can start. Yes, please. They might join us.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the great presentations and panel. My name is Amr Barghouth. I'm with Chemonics International. And I have a question to any of the panelists, if they'd like to answer. You highlighted the importance of sound planning, long-term strategic planning, as well as short to medium-term planning. Your countries and nation states are on the front lines of climate adaptation, and I imagine that will have an impact on future energy demand as well as supply. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of how climate adaptation for your population will impact the energy demand in the future. You mentioned, for example, a heat wave where this, it burns your skin. Well, would you then need ACs that would need to run on energy, or would you have salt water intrusion of your groundwater leading to the need for desalination and so on? So I'm just curious if you've already started incorporating climate adaptation needs into your long-term planning for the energy sector. Thank you.
Who wants to go first?
Thank you. I'll go first, and maybe the panelists can join. I mean, climate adaptation is, in itself, is a very complex term. I mean, I myself haven't really grasped the meaning of climate adaptation. But for the Pacific Island nations, I mean, you've heard the challenges we have. There's some commonality, but there is also lots of differences, because one, land mass, two, some are just low-lying islands. Fiji is blessed, we have mountains and we have rivers, so we can dam them and have hydro. I mean, not everyone has that opportunity. But surely from EFL's perspective going forward, I mean, that's why we are pushing our transition to RE. I mean, we notice that in Fiji, the air conditioned load is, when it's warm, it goes up. We go from 150, 60 megawatts right up to almost 200 megawatts. That's the impact of air conditioning load in the Fiji context. So going forward, I mean, our step into solar is, a step in the right direction. It's going to get warmer. It's not going to get any colder. It's going to get warmer in this part of the world. So if we move into RE and use a lot of solar, then we are heading in the right direction. But then we need to manage how we use that new technology. Like it's kind of a new thing to have solar grid connected, And my friend Mark is going to present after this. He's got a very good story on how they've managed Hawaii. And I was very impressed when he was just sharing to me on the first day we met. Yeah. So I need to pick his brains to take it back to Fiji. But that's our context. Eh? Surely, as the climate gets hotter, we have a lot of variability in the inflows into hydro. I mean, in the New Zealand context, if they have a bad snow year, it affects the hydro in the next year, because those are the snow that melt and go into the rivers, and they get their hydroelectricity done. In Fiji, if we don't have rain, we have to resort to other forms of energy source. And the easiest one to run to is the diesel generator. You just press the button, it runs up. But we are trying to track away from that. So in our plans, we're looking at our resources, the potential to exploit in RE, and we're trying to do that. I mean, if we exploit everything and the demand keeps growing, then we'll just have to off the lights at certain times of the day, unless we want to go back to diesel. But like any other government, the government of Fiji say, even if you have to make a loss, as long as you keep the power on. And that was told to our CEO twice last year, when we were going through a tough time of drought. We had to hire diesel generators as a stopgap measure, and that's expensive. Okay? Not only in the fuel, but in the hiring charges. So in terms of adaptation, that's what Fiji and EFL is doing going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Fakiaki. Anyone else wants to comment on the climate adaptation question?
Thank you, Peter. I think for Solomon Power and Solomon Islands, the impacts of climate are real. We face a lot of flood that knocks down our distribution network, or either flood our substations or our equipment. So I think planning and having the infrastructure built in such a way that they are climate resilient are quite important for us Pacific Islands. And similarly, on the demand side, as mentioned by Gibson, our context of Pacific is we only have a hot and rainy season, so you don't have that seasonality in your demand. So in the context of Solomon Islands, we usually notice only during the daytime, especially in the afternoon where it's very hot. That is when you have the peak demand, mainly driven by solar, mainly driven by the demand from air conditioning. So in our generation planning, we ensure that we have the capacity available in the afternoons. In addition, we are also looking at technology that are climate resilient. So in our context, we are balancing the solar hydro with hydro plant with solar. So both inversely together. So when you have rainy seasons, then you have hydro supplying most of the generation, and during sunny season where you don't have much water from rainfall, then you have the solar energy from the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Want to give you the audience a chance to ask other questions, please. Yeah, if you could introduce yourself and step to the microphone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Gabish. I'm a private sector investment officer here at ADB, and thank you for presenting. It's been very interesting. I was curious, before the break, we ended it talking about the challenges of land and land acquisition. Briefly talked about floating solar, but one area that we have not talked about is rooftop solar. And I was wondering if you see rooftop solar as an opportunity, or do you view it from the utility perspective as a threat?
Who wants to take that? Utilities?
Yeah, from EFL's perspective, there is a sense that it's a threat, but it's an opportunity also when we want to able to shave the peak from diesels. But it's really a mindset. You need to think like that, because there is technology to really meter what you give to the grid and offset what you get from the grid. Okay. It's one area we looked at when we did the renewable energy integration investment plan with ADB support. I mean, we looked at the different forms of opportunities in terms of, and one of them was rooftop solar. Okay, but I mean that's one area that utilities should look at. I mean, if you have a high diesel bill, why don't you encourage household owners. I mean, it's just an incentive, a change in a bit of legislation in terms of regulatory functions, requirements, and let the market drive that, okay? If you give the incentive, the market will take it. But if you don't incentivize, why does anybody want to climb on top of their roof and put an extra hole so when it rains, it leaks through the ceiling? Eh? I mean, those are the kind of things. But if you incentivize them well, you will have a lot of rooftop solar. And that's one area we're looking at in Fiji. But it's a true question. Sometimes the utility feels that it's been threatened.
Thank you, Fatiaki. I think the point of it's a mindset and how you approach it. That's really a big one. Please.
Thank you, Peter. For Chugh, we absolutely support the opportunity to bring in particularly big rooftops. We supported so much so that we brought in structural engineers to actually look at the rooftops of hotels and grocery stores and determine that it is safe to put solar panels on there. For residential, that's a bit different. So we did provide the structural findings to the hotels. We're now looking at two different options. One is a straight lease agreement for the size of your rooftop, or net metering, which then you pull in the policy level changes you have to make, not just bringing in equipment, but you have to make the changes to the laws. So we're pushing to also beat the competition. There are now private companies coming into the market and saying, hey, I can produce power during the day at 20 cents and the utility is 55 cents. Our laws doesn't protect us, but I don't believe in having laws that force the private sector to use us. We have to think outside of the box and entice the private sector to come in. And we can't just sit and wait, because if we do, someone will start putting in rooftops and producing power cheaper, and we become a backup generator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before closing, any other questions from the audience? One or two quick ones. Otherwise, I think we can continue talking about this, and I know there's a lot of experience and expertise to be shared from the panel. But I think in the interest of time, we'll move to the next panel. But before that, I would like to thank everyone, all the panelists and presenters for the time today. I really learned a lot, and thank you for sharing the experiences, and also for the great discussions before and on the panel. Thank you very much, and please give a round of applause for the panelists. All right, while we're getting set up, the next session will be chaired by my colleague from the energy team Southeast Asia and Pacific. Chitra Priambodo, who's a senior energy specialist based here in Manila. And yeah, I'll hand over to her, and then we'll have the panelists join.
Okay, thank you. For the second sessions after the break, we are going to start our sessions with the presentations related to the renewable energy penetrations and the experience of Hawaii. So I would like to welcome Mr. Mark Matsura. Mr. Matsura is from the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. He is a senior smart grid program manager and a founding members of GridStart, Grid System Technology Advanced Research Team. A research team focused on the energy transition enabling policy and regulations, advanced grid architectures, grid modernization technologies, and novel methods to achieve the reliable grid integrations of renewable energy resources, power system optimization, and energy resilience goals. So without further ado, I think I would like to hand over to Mr. Mark Matsura to share the experience of Hawaii. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, ADB, for inviting me to speak. My mission, if I choose to accept it, and I guess I did, is to talk about how does Hawaii manage its variable renewable energy, and you got 10 minutes. So everybody take a deep breath, get ready. It was good to hear some people talking about the planning of things, so I'm gonna kind of go over, managing things, but trying to set yourself up for success to manage your variable renewable before you connect it, right? So in the planning process, make sure that you get the resources you need and the support on your grid and like flexibility you need to manage it. Just to give you a quick overview of the Hawaii Islands, we have 6 different grids. There's two major companies. Hawaiian Electric Company manages Oahu, Molokai, Maui, Lanai, and Hawaii. The Kauai is managed by a cooperative, KIUC. For Kauai, I have the renewable energy percentage for each island. So Kauai is 60%, Oahu is about 30%, Maui is about 30%, Big Island is about 50% because they have geothermal on that island. The other thing I wanted to highlight was in red, you can see the installed PV and wind capacity, the variable renewable energy, as a percentage of their peak demand on the island. So for Kauai, they have 156% PV capacity on their grid compared to their peak, so very high levels. So of course they need battery storage. The other thing I'll mention, each of my slides, I could probably do a day on it, so it's kind of a teaser. I'm gonna go over it very quickly. If you wanna know more about a certain topic, then you can get in touch with me. But the other thing on the slide is the battery storage levels. So Kauai, for example, 260 megawatt hours of battery storage on that island. So we've gotten to very high levels of variable renewable energy, and we've kind of lived through the pain of learning, again, how to manage, how to plan for it. Let's see, the other thing was, oops, here, so let me just jump into it. So as far as, how do you set yourself up for success? I don't know if you can see the bottom one of this, but the bottom one says IBR interconnection and performance requirements. IBR being inverter-based resources, because modern wind turbines and solar and battery are all inverter-based these days. So they're very different from your conventional generation, where it's the characteristics of that resource of conventional generation is more based on physics, right? The weight of the spinning turbine and generator. Short circuit is based on impedance, so everything's kind of laid out. But for inverter-based resources, it's all based on programming, right? So the good thing about inverters is they can do a lot of things, but the bad thing is you gotta program it and tell it exactly what you want it to do. So the interconnection requirements get a lot more detailed when you're looking at inverter-based resources. But that's kind of your, having the resources themselves be part of the solution. That's kind of your foundation. Lean on them as much as you can with your interconnection requirements. Next, given that is your foundation, then you need to do your planning, right? So you do your what resources do you need, and then what else on the grid do you need to support those resources so that you can integrate it and everything will operate reliably. And then in Hawaii, we have a competitive procurement process that's competitive procurement framework, where we need to procure our resources through competitive bidding, but when we go out for an RFP, that RFP needs to be, by regulation, consistent with what's in your plan, right? And that's brought a lot of kind of more organization and sanity, basically, to the resource acquisition, rather than having people come to us with, oh, I have this project, or I have that project, look at this project. We said, no, we have a plan. We're going to issue an RFP. If you have a project, go bid into it. Right? Oh, and then the iterative part, we actually, in part of the planning process, we'll go out to the market to get resource, and then using those prices, we'll take another look back at our plan to make sure that what we assumed in our plan was appropriate. So this is just a picture of a solar battery project on Oahu. So right now, on all the islands, we're at the point where we need to have shifting batteries. So the projects are coming in with 4 hours, 5 hours of battery storage to shift the energy from the daytime to the evening. So we talked about inverter-based resource interconnection requirements. The one we use in Hawaii is 1547 for medium voltage distribution connected resources, DER. It provides a lot of the details of what they need to do. For island systems, for Hawaii, we took a bit of an exception to the frequency ride-through because for island systems, the frequency dives a lot deeper. So we needed something wider than what was in the standard. But the standard allows you to take exceptions through these source requirement documents, and the utility required profile are all the settings on frequency and voltage regulation. All those things are provided. And then those documents and the standards are used to certify equipment. So once you certify your equipment, the manufacturer can say, I'm certified for your grid. When the engineer at the utility looks at the application, they say, is that the inverter, is that approved? Yes, it's approved. Okay, go ahead. So it makes the process a lot quicker. For transmission level, there's IEEE 2800 that just came out in 2022. 2022. For transmission connected resources, the voltage ride-through is a lot deeper, and the specifications in this one get a lot more detailed as to the response to transient events. Like I said, you can't just assume it's gonna react in a positive way during a transient. You have to make sure that it's programmed and certified to react well in voltage dips and frequency dips, excuse me. The other important thing on this one is the detailed modeling and model validation requirements, because you need to be able to model, if you're going to plan well, you need to be able to model the resources that are coming on the grid and also have the model of existing resources to model the next one coming on the grid. So requiring models of these resources that mimic the programming is very important. Okay, here's a project on Kauai we talked about with 60% renewable. This is a Tesla project, 13 megawatts, 52 megawatt hour battery. And then on Kauai, they're starting to look at grid forming inverters. So these inverters have grid forming capability, which helps when you get to very high penetrations of inverter-based resources. So this is part of the planning process, so very detailed planning process, starting with your least cost resource plan, right? So just, and then once you figure out what resources you need for the variable renewable energy ones, you need to understand the characteristics of those resources, and including the distributed resources that are assumed on the distribution level, those get fed up into your resource requirements. But then you need to look at your adequacy of supply. You're gonna be able to serve all the load when you need to. Production cost simulations will look at things like excess energy, how much excess energy you got, your ramping capabilities, it's enough to keep up with the variability of the resources that you've modeled. And then even down to the stability, so load flows, the kind of standard stability runs, but also down to more EMTP, very detailed modeling for large inverter-based resources. So all of these are iterative. If any one step, it doesn't work, you go back and you redo your assumptions in your resource. And then we talked about the issue of diversification, smoothing things out. So for our experience in distributed level rooftop solar, it's not so much of an issue because each individual one is jumping around, but in aggregate, it's all pretty smooth. Let's see, here's just we have a big standalone battery now on Oahu. This is a 850 megawatt, 565 megawatt hour battery that was put in to help with the peaking generation requirements as well as reserves and frequency regulation. And then finally is the acquisition part. So like I said, when we go out, our competitive bidding framework requires that we go out for resources that are in our plan, that we've already planned for. And we've also kind of had a lessons learned and kind of transition of our PPAs, how we do it. So initially we were afraid of excess energy because we had so much energy coming on. we said, oh, we're going to push that risk over to the developer. But what the developer did was they just priced that risk into their price of energy. So we ended up paying for it anyway. But then when we curtailed them and we didn't pay for the energy, they would complain. So there was a litigation risk also. So we're constantly fighting with this one. So we changed to the take or pay. So the utility took the risk of curtailment because the utility has actually the control over how much, and they can do things to take more energy, right? So you kind of place the risk there. But then we took it one more step when we had the batteries. We said we want dispatchable generation. So the utility had full control over when the energy is taken. But the only thing the developer needs to do is make sure they're available. So if any of their inverters or panels are not available, when we call on it, then they get liquidated damages. So utility takes the risk of energy usage, and the project just looks out for itself on reliability, and they get a fixed monthly payment. So there's no risk of even the weather now for the financiers. So the financiers love it. They get a fixed cash flow, which again further reduce the pricing that was coming. The more risk you take away from a project, the lower they can price it. Okay, 10 minutes is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm sure that it's very good presentation, an excellent one, and I'm sure that people will have questions. But I think we can hold your questions first because we are going to go to the last panel sessions for the Pacific sessions. So this in the previous panel, we talk about the challenges and the lessons learned from the Pacific regions. And now in the second sessions, we are going to discuss on the way forward, especially how to enable to scale up the investments to renewable energy. So I would like to welcome our panelists for the second sessions to the stage. Our first panelist, Mr. Fathiaki Gibson, the board directors of Energy Fiji Limited. Please welcome on stage. Thank you so much for being the panelist again in the second panel. Ms. Cinderina Adeang, Administrations Manager, Nauru Utilities Corporations. Mr. Andrew Kautoke, Strategic and Business Development Manager, Tonga Power Limited. And Mr. Mike Lithenfeld, Chief Executive Officer, Solar Pacific Energy Corporations, Philippines. And from ADB, we have Mr. Harun Ahmed Khawaja, Regional Head, Private Sector Development, Pacific Department. Okay, thank you so much for the panelists. I think I will just start with the questions. I have like specific questions for each of the panelists. We can start with Gibson. Probably, Mr. Gibson, since you already talked about the challenges and lessons learned about the how to the scaling up renewable energy from biomass, and then how you now working with the multilateral agency like ADB and IFC. Could you share your experience in terms of the enabling environment in the government, as the utility, at the Fiji government, what have you done to enable the private sectors, and what are the challenges? What lessons that you learned from failures, especially, and how it has evolved? Over to you.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the two moderators for giving me the privilege to speak on two panels. Thank you so much. In terms of the question, I mean, in the Fiji context, to enable investors to come in, one, there must be political stability. Otherwise, investors lose confidence, whatever sector you're talking about. And the second is, I mean, having the the key thing in the Fiji context was the tariff. Now, if you have any regulators sitting here, well, last time we were able to develop renewable energies, make inroads into the renewable energy, is when we lifted the tariff. in 2010. So we were able to develop a 44 megawatt hydro scheme. We've been able to pay it off. See, so apart from the political stability, there must be a focus on making the utility financially stable. It can stand on its own. Its balance sheet is strong. I mean, EFL has got loans from a syndicate bank in the local banking, 4 banks. They've given us a loan in the syndicate. There's enough headroom for EFL, to loan to develop renewable energy. Apart from that, then we have our partners, ADB, for example, and the support it renders to EFL and any other sector in Fiji through the Fiji government. So you have those challenges. I think those are the 2 key ones. Political stability, a good tariff, because the tariff, when the investor looks at it, especially from, say, IPP, he knows he can make a return. But I take Mark's incentive, that's, to me, that last option is a good option. But, Fiji is behind Hawaii. We need to talk to Mark more and take those we talked about take of pay and we had those, but that last option that Mark presented, that is an opportunity for us in the Pacific. But then, apart from that, you have the legislation, incentives. Governments in the Pacific always say, we want to encourage investors to come to our country. It has to be enabled by the environment, by doing business. When investors come, they want to be able to come to a one-stop shop so they can get their business registered, whatever. And some Pacific local governments, Pacific governments, sometimes their conditions for investors are a bit, should I say, trying. It's a challenge. We have to look at that. I'm not a political person. I'm not a businessman. But I know these are the barriers. Yeah? Barriers for any business coming in. If you lift the barrier high, no business can come into your country. It's got to be a balance. So that's, the Fiji context. That's how we can enable more investment into the renewable energy space. Yeah, and we're looking at that because we want to go into the solar. This is not small solar. We're looking at 100 megawatts plus. Yeah, but we have some good players. We've got an American company who's the owner of Fiji Water. They call themselves the Wonderful Company. They can come in and put in 30 megawatts. When we had the discussion with them, they told us, just tell us how much you want, how much capacity, megawatt, and where to connect. Those are good news for us utilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gibson. So I think as you have highlighted, the political stability is very important. A good tariff and also like the business environment in terms of regulation and policy. So I think so after we talk about this, the perspective of how to scale up the investments of renewable energy by the enabling environment. We could go to the public sector here, to Ms. Adeang from Nauru. What would be what are the current challenges in your country's power sectors, and what would be the requirements in Nauru's energy sector infrastructure development?
Thank you very much, Chitra, for the question. Before I start with the challenges, I'd just like to give an overview of Nauru so the audience knows what the energy contribution and supply and demand in Nauru is. Nauru is a isolated island in the middle of the Central Pacific, and we're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. It is only 21 square kilometers to go around the whole island. So hearing the last few days about the countries of other countries, it's very overwhelming and it's massive. But although Nauru may be minuscule, it is really relevant. And there are people there that are living and want to have a good life. And yes, so 21 square kilometers, and there's about 12,000, the population is about 12,000. And the climate is about 30 to 32 degrees Celsius every day, so it's very hot. So if it's 28 or 29, that's a cold day for us, but it's summer all year round. That's why we have a beautiful tan. Yep. And but yeah, so that's Nauru in a coconut shell. And where I work at the Nauru Utilities Corporation, we are the sole provider. We are a state-owned enterprise, but we are the sole provider of electricity, water, and recently sanitation. So all of these are very important services to the public, and we have to maintain and operate them on a daily basis and to keep everyone happy. Yep, and the challenges mainly would be procurement of diesel fuel, because this is very costly, as we all know. And it costs utilities maybe at $4 million a year to procure fuel. And that's probably the main challenge for us, just to procure the fuel and get it on the island, and so that we can have the generators working and electricity on 24/7. We have 100% coverage, and we are trying to maintain that for everyone on the island. And the next, another challenge would be the breakdown of the generators, mainly, so that will involve mainly procurement of spare parts. And some of the generators there are even older than me. So parts are not available. It's really hard, like when we want to order the parts, they're no longer available or in produce. So we have to keep up with technological development and all that. And so I think those are the most challenges that we experience at Nauru Utilities Corporation. Because if the generators are, if they're not working or something wrong, like they break down, then there will be a shutdown, obviously, because actually the daily demand is about 9 to 10 megawatts daily. And so we have to maintain that. So at the moment, we're sort of on a reactive mode, and we want to be more proactive. Yep, thank you.
Maybe if I would like to have like further questions to Ms. Adeang, since you mentioned that mostly are generated by diesel fuels, how's your country's or like Nauru's plans towards renewable energy? And do you have like the plans, and whether the public has already stepped on and getting like some funding from the multilaterals, or is there any plans for scaling up private investors here? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we already have plans. We have solar projects, solar farms on Nauru, which is with renewable energy. Solar is the most viable. They've had feasible studies with wind and ocean. It doesn't work on Nauru. So the only viable renewable energy is solar. And at the moment, it's very small. We have 3.1 megawatts solar. But we now, we have with the ADB, we have a solar farm that is being implemented and in the initial stage of setting it up. And Actually, that's a 6 megawatts solar farm. And that is very positive for Nauru because that will cover, I just want to add that the Sustainable Development Goals of Nauru in 1999, our government said that we wanted to have 50% renewable energy. And at that time, everyone was laughing, well, the Pacific Forum, and they said that was very ambitious. But after this, ADB's participation and their assistance, financial assistance, we will be able to achieve more than 50% renewable energy with solar.
Thank you very much, Miss Adeang. I think I move to Harun. I have like 2 questions, but maybe I can combine these 2 questions into one. But first of all, in your perspective, since most of the countries in Pacific are relatively small, would investment in clean energy and energy infrastructure attractive enough to the private sectors? Like what would be like the key unique features that would attract in your perspective and in your experience? Maybe I'll ask you that one first and I'll come to the second question.
Thanks, Chitra. Very good question. I'm new to the Pacific. I've only been working on this region now for the last 10 months or so. This was front of my mind as well. And it's interesting, Mark's presentation about Hawaii just before this. Before ADB, I used to work for a company called AES, an American energy company. And that company over 30 years grew from 40 megawatts to 40,000 megawatts. And one of its first investments was Hawaii. And it made it work in probably the toughest of situations. It toughened up the people in that organization to basically be able to operate anywhere. And I think it's testimony that only recently they have set, and that same business has set a record in Hawaii for 9 cents for power. And it's testimony that they stayed with the country despite becoming so large, because it was such a training ground and testing ground for their talent, basically. So that's my first little segue story to answer your question. But the second one, what I've found in my 10 months in the Pacific is that the business person in the Pacific, and there's one sitting next to me who I won't steal his thunder, is probably the toughest business people anywhere. Okay, there's that, I think, that saying that when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and that's literally true in the Pacific. So while this setting is very, very challenging, it brings out the best in business people, and they've done it. Our business, our advisory business, advised in Palau. It was successfully done there. There's process going on in Tonga right now. We've invested. Our investing side is invested in Samoa. All very small plants, but all doing what they're supposed to do. So that's my second point, that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And the final point is that I think Leah made that point earlier today in her speech, opening remarks, that actually these countries, the 14 countries, the big ocean countries, are spending $6 billion a year on fuel, right? That is a big number. And therein is the opportunity to make money, and a business person doesn't leave an opportunity to make money alone, right? So this, I think, it's, if you look at it, and the fact that these technologies are now proven, scalable, replicable, standardized, bite-sized, they can be reproduced from place to place efficiently. I think this thing, so the size of the market in total, the acumen and the enterprising nature of the business person, and the fact that power generation companies, transmission distribution, they build their talent through such situations. So I think those are the 3 things that have heartened me, that frankly private sector can be brought in, is being brought in, and is being successful in this small setting, basically. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So it's very enlightening that we see that the opportunities here in in scaling up renewable energy, since most of these Pacific islands consumes like a significant amount of fossil fuels and rely heavily on highly dependent on fossil fuels. And what about the roles of multilateral agency like ADB that can that could support in these Pacific countries for scaling up clean energy and energy infrastructure?
Sure. No, Fatyaki made a good intro for me on this one earlier on today when he was talking about the work that we're doing in Fiji now with the climate investment funds. That is going to hopefully provide a template for what we can do end to end. And where that starts from is a lot of mention has been made of studying and planning the system properly. So that's where we came in at the earliest of stages, so that things are laid out in a systematic manner. Again, we are the honest broker. We have no vested interest as to go in one direction or the other. We are just data driven in that respect. Second, the point was made about, I think, transition needs transmission point. T&D is our bread and butter, you know well, on the sovereign side, that's what we invest in. So there's no transition without that. The third is our advisory business, which is totally arm's length and can come and do transaction advisory services to run a proper competition. Our procurement process was talked about as well earlier, thankfully. And then in all these settings, you need storage as well. So storage will be funded mostly with a combination of sovereign lending and non-sovereign, just because of its cost and implications. And then there's the generation plant itself, which lends itself to funding from our non-sovereign side of things. So this is really, and that's where this Maya role, which has just been recently created under our new operating model, comes in, that it's an opportunity for all parts, all three parts, upstream, midstream, downstream of the bank, to be brought together in an integrated manner. And for me, the secret in the sauce is, finding the right champion in our organization, mission leaders like yourself, who basically manage all the interfaces. Because, the project will be live on planning at one stage, then things will shift to the T&D sovereign loan, then it'll shift to the TAS mandate. But if there's some champion who really has relationships and believes in the project, they will manage that and bring it all together to get the end result. So I think it all comes down to people. For me, in the end, it's having passionate people like yourselves, Len, Rafa, and others who are doing these projects and these Emily in these difficult settings. So I think that's what we have to offer. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Harun, for these insights. And I think from ADB we move to another electric utility in Pacific. From the first presentation in this session this afternoon, we already heard the presentation from Mr. Vina Moa, the acting CEO of TPL, related to the challenges and lessons learned of how Tonga has been evolved in terms of scaling up their energy and power sector. I would like to also ask questions now to Andrew, as he has been in the ground for the developments of this renewable energy. Maybe if you can share the Tonga's experience in establishing these steps, gradual steps, and it indicates on the renewable energies implementing projects in Outer Island, as well as the expansions or the rehabilitations of the network. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chitra. And I thank you for this opportunity to participate in this panel. I just spoke to Mike early on before our session, and we have the biggest challenge of entertaining our participants, especially at this time. I can see everyone is excited at this time, but I hope we can share a few insights that would gauge your interest. I think from my perspective in Tonga's side of operations, before my answer, Chitra will focus on two main aspects. So firstly, I'll focus on experience in scaling up renewable energy and attracting private sector investment. But linking it back, I want to go back to the theme of this Asia Clean Energy Forum. So accelerating the clean energy transition and ensuring energy security and affordability. I think what's missing from here is to have an inclusive acceleration of clean energy transition. And that's basically what where the Pacific comes in. Of course, this is an Asia forum, but the Pacific's involvement is Pacific also has a part to play, especially with regards to climate change. Of course, we have the lowest CO2 carbon emissions, but if you compare to the developing countries, we have the most ambitious targets. And that's basically the reality. And this is not set in a sense to get more investments that can be managed. The reality is that in Tonga's perspective, we still rely a lot on diesel generation, which is approximately around 70 to 80% of our energy mix, and the remaining from renewable energy. So this transition, acceleration in renewable energy transition, is not only for decarbonization, but we're also looking into energy security. Our target is, I believe, is the most audacious one out of the whole Pacific, which is to achieve 70% renewable energy by 2025. But luckily enough, we haven't set an exact month and a time. So we're looking at December 11:59 p.m. That's the time that we want to achieve that target. But this is the reality. You know, we came up with this strategic insight 2 years ago. And there was no buy-in from the government in terms of this vision. But looking at the political issues that's happening right now in the global arena, energy security is a really big issue, especially with the wars that's happening right now in Russia and Ukraine. So with a country such as Tonga in the Pacific, as mentioned by one of our panelists, we still rely a lot on diesel generation. So that logistics of getting diesel into our small Pacific islands is still very costly. And as mentioned by our counterpart, although we want to transition to renewable energy, but if you don't have proper asset management and integrated resources planning, especially with replacement of our diesel generators, you should be expecting a lot of interruption in reliability and resilience. Going back to the private sector approach, from Tonga's side, we are currently in the steps of involving independent power producers. We accept the fact that we cannot rely solely on donor grants. I've heard some statements a few sessions on where it's like when you're moving towards renewable energy, you need to get creative with your financial approach. So in Tonga's side of things, we also have to get the private sector, especially the independent power producers involved. Some of our fellow members from the previous panel mentioned that one of their challenges is the local capacity. Independent power producers actually come with a SPV, special purpose vehicle, that actually takes off some of the risk on O&M from the power utility. So not only does it gauge the interest of our local, builds up the capacity, but it also enables private sector investment. So in the short term, in the private sector, we're developing local contractors' knowledge in constructing these solar farms and renewable energy farms. But in order for us to sustain this knowledge, we need to come up with more upskilling, sustain the upskilling of our local contractors. So we're actually looking into a rooftop solar program, which is kind of our next step. And we're really interested in what India is currently doing in their solar rooftop program. Because this model enables all parties in the private sector to be involved, banks, local contractors building up their capacity, and there's also, of course, the utilities involvement. I know, Chitra, I'm almost running out of time. I just have this small section in terms of the challenges in reliability and affordability. So similar to some of our other Pacific islands, we have this quadrilemma challenge of a low carbon transition. Of course, it's been used as a political agenda of moving to renewable, you're going to have affordable electricity. And that's what sticks in the mind of our consumers. They don't care about reliability and resilience. But when there's power outages due to the renewable, everyone points the finger back at the utility. And I know some of our colleagues here have that experience. But the truth is, once you move to renewable energy, you need to accept the risk that comes with it. You need to accept that in order to transition effectively, you need to strategically plan. Your traditional energy source needs to be upgraded to ensure that you transition to renewable effectively. We also face the same issue with our diesel gensets. We tried integrating, we successfully integrated our solar farms into our EMS system, but our diesel gensets haven't been upgraded since 1998. And when we installed some of our controllers, it wasn't able to really be compatible with the technology. So what we're doing now is we're also seeking donor funds to replace some of these traditional energy sources. But we've gotten the support from the government of Australia. I mean, but that's the reality of the transition. Like, if you want to transition to clean energy, your dirty energy still needs to be managed effectively. So that's just my inputs, Chitra, from Tonga's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. In fact, I'm quite fortunate to have been working together with Andrew and Fee now. What's impressed me is that the steps that have been taken by the Tongan government. Previously, they set up with the small scales of renewable energy, but then when they scale up to the higher level, they also prepare with the battery energy storage for the load shifting as well as for the frequency, for the grid stability. So that is the thing which looks like that you've already look into further ahead and to scale up into the larger utility scale. So I think I'm going to move for the private sector, Mike. Since you've been now working in the Pacifics and you as a private sector clean power developer, can you provide your examples from your experiences, what exactly that you have faced in your steps towards investment in the Pacific Island? What works, what's not works, and what do you think the government or the enabling environment needs to be there?
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me to speak. I guess it's a good question to start with, actually, because I have to say that this is obviously in many ways a new market and comes with a lot of challenges. But what we've seen so far, actually, from some of the leaders that have been represented here, during this conference, is that it can be done well. And I think some of the approaches that have been taken by some of our colleagues that have been speaking already, demonstrates that there are already really smart people involved here, and a lot of very thoughtful and careful consideration has been going into these projects. That being said, it is a challenging environment in a lot of ways. It's often said, but it's true that investors think about things in terms of risk mitigation, and there are all kinds of risks, and we can think of them in terms of technical risks and financial or commercial risks, political or social risks. And in each of those categories, of course, there's a long list. I'm making myself nervous actually just thinking about all those risks. But the question is, how do we mitigate them, right? And a lot has been said about this already, and I really agree with some of the comments that were made in terms of the importance of having, for example, again, very careful and considerate approach to system analysis, grid modeling in particular, and design, and helping investors with as much information of high quality that can be provided so that we can know what we're working towards. So having some clarity around specifically grid constraints or other risks from the technical perspective. And a colleague of mine from Palau actually reminded me as well that typically we think about the IPP scope as maybe being limited to the generating facility. But to the extent that, through studies and due diligence, it's determined that there might be grid upgrades required, for example, or other kinds of assets that will form part of the public utilities system, that can also very well be included in the IPP scope. And we've done this, in fact, on some of our projects where we've taken that lead and invested in those assets, and then those are handed over to the public utility upon completion of construction and commissioning. Now, of course, there's a cost that comes with that. So we have to consider what the impact on a tariff might be. But that's one kind of area that we've seen, I think, can be handled well. Another piece on the financial side, of course, in terms of risks, I agreed with some of the statements that were made earlier that we all hope the public utilities in this region will grow in terms of their financial strength and will have balance sheets that they can really stand behind. But the reality is, in many cases, the financial strength of some of our potential off-takers may not meet kind of the credit worthiness requirements of our investors or our financing partners. So it's important, I think, where I would suggest that consideration around credit enhancement mechanisms, which can take different forms, everything from cash in an escrow account to letters of credit, from reputable banks to other mechanisms. Nobody wants to say, limited waivers of sovereign immunity, but there are different approaches to kind of bolstering the confidence of investors that payments will be made, right, or that there's recourse if something does go wrong. And then just quickly, just to wrap up, I'd also say there's been a lot discussed about project sites. We all kind of understand that project site, availability and quality can be a big challenge, and we experienced this ourselves on some of our projects in the region. And I think to the extent possible where governments or public utilities can at least help to identify suitable sites, if not actually play a role in providing those sites, that can also significantly help, I think, investors get comfortable coming into a market where we don't necessarily understand whether it be land rights or in these areas as well, we have to pay very special attention to biodiversity and other social safeguard considerations and so on. So that was, in our experience, an area that was quite challenging. But the last piece I'll say is, and again, speaking from experience, as some of my colleagues and friends here have been mentioning, one of the really key critical factors is that the public utility or the off-taker and the independent power producer, together with the government really at all levels, is aligned in terms of trying to manifest this vision, because there are going to be all kinds of challenges and constraints that come up along the way. But if we are in it together, and I know that kind of sounds easy, but and it's not. But I think we will find, and we have in our experience found countless ways where we need to get creative and flexible as long as we have that common goal very clearly understood among us.
Thank you, Mike. I think like the last comments that you mentioned related to the aligning the public, the government, and then the private investors and the utility to get creative to provide solutions. That would be like a very critical recipes for a success. I think like before I go to the questions and answer sessions, I just would like to ask Andrew about, since you have like lots of outages and complaints, how do you
Thanks for exposing.
How do you cope with that? Like, what's the strategy of TPL to think about, facing these consumers?
Thank you, Chitra. I was going to say whiskey on the rocks, but to give you the most appropriate response, it comes back to some of the main points that was made in the first panel discussion. Renewable energy literacy is actually a really key aspect that needs in our Pacific Island states. I can't speak for the developing countries, but for small island developing states, you need to be able to effectively communicate to the higher level. Firstly, start from the parliamentary level, the ministers. We've actually faced the worst of the worst scenario that any utility can face, especially with this renewable energy transition. You know, everyone has their own political agenda, and we actually got called into Parliament for questioning on why there's so many outages and whether we have the capacity to manage all of this, the electricity grid. But the truth is, it's just we need to be able to break down the technical in order to a language that the ministers are able to understand and government. And then after we're able to get that level to understand this transition, and then we have to look into the people's level. But the issue now, Chitra, is that although we provide the information to the very best we can, but with nowadays social media is a really big factor that is, I would say, causing the biggest, that's emphasizing the issue more than it actually is. So, so from our perspective, there's a matter of getting the work done, and then making sure that the power is reliable, and then because the truth is we can't always satisfy what our customers want, you know. So for us, it's ensuring that the power is reliable, ensuring this transition is done right, and also being able to communicate the right message to our customers. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think like this highlights the importance of a very good communication strategy for utilities to face, you know, like these transitions and how to communicate these transitions. So I think like before we close the sessions, I would like to give opportunity to the floors for questions. Any questions from the audience? Yes. Maybe you can introduce yourself, Ms. Tuvalu.
Thank you. Silati again from Tuvalu. I just want to attain your insight or views on the building code because we have rooftop project, like a lot of renewable energy projects, but I think incorporate into building code and have that standard incorporated into the building code. I think it can standardize like all the buildings and build resilience in terms of moving towards a renewable energy. I think that's another strategy to incorporate into the building code, and I would like to hear the different experiences from the different countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first questions is related to the building code. Maybe before we answer, we go to the panelists to answer that questions. Any other questions? Maybe questions to presentations of Mark as well? Any other questions? Okay. So maybe like if there's no questions, maybe Gibsons, do you want to respond to these questions on building code? And maybe after that, I'll get it over to Andrew.
Thank you. The building code is supposed to protect the construction of any building, whether it's a single story, double story, whatever. That's my understanding of the building code. And they do have people who monitor the designs to meet the minimum building code. For Fiji's context, where our building code stops, we go to Australian standards or New Zealand standards. That's it. So to answer the question, if we move to a policy that we want rooftop solar, then it's just making sure that the building code has the the requirements to take that additional load on your roof. I mean, that's a structural, looking at it from a structural perspective. And then, not only does it take the load of your solar panels and everything else, but it should also withstand, the cyclonic seasons that we have, so that it doesn't rip your solar panel away and takes your roof with it. I mean, that's a typical example is like your solar water system. You have a solar panel and a tank that warms up your water, and you use it in your hot water system at home or any building for that matter. Those are designed to withstand cyclonic conditions. And if we are saying we get category 5 cyclones nowadays, then there must be a review of the building code in whichever country it is, so that it can be resilient enough. The designs can be resilient, construction of buildings can be resilient and withstand those kind of wind loads. Yeah.
Okay, maybe, do you have, okay?
If it's okay, Andrew, I was just going to jump in quickly because it's a good question. And I also think in terms of, ground-mounted PV and battery projects where we're kind of focusing in the region is also building codes, just design standards, which for new technology, they may not exist in some of the markets where we go. And obviously we try to bring best practices from other markets and lean on experiences or standards from other areas. You've got the added complexity of climate change itself, potentially exacerbating worst case scenarios. And so I think there needs to be a collaborative approach and involvement of advisors, but it also just reminded me of something important, I think, in terms of supporting the private sector involvement here, because it relates to this very good question, which is insurance and the availability of insurance in this market. As most of you know, in the Pacific in general, the availability of insurance for projects like these is really limited. And in our experience, just in the past 18 months, the cost of insurance where available has become significantly higher than it was, which directly impacts project viability or tariffs to off-takers. So that's another area where perhaps there's a role for multilaterals or other, financing parties or creative participants to help, I think, maybe bring resources that aren't available in the market right now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mike. I think I just want to add on what Mike mentioned. Before I talk about the energy side of things, because I'm not a civil engineer to be an expert in giving you the building code advice, but I think the main challenge for ensuring that there's the building code is being enforced, that's the main area that needs to be taken into account, is that there's actually, I think what the main results that we can see is after a tropical cyclone. If we see most of the houses being blown down after a category 3 or 4 cyclone, then we understand that the building code for that place wasn't being enforced. So I think it comes back down to the regulatory level of things, especially with our Pacific Islands where we're exposed to this inclement weather events. But going back, applying it to the energy sector side of things, Tonga has faced category 3 cyclones all the way up to category 5 cyclones, which is up to 252 kilometers per hour. So of course we want to have a sustainable transition with the sustainable energy sources with solar and wind. But then if these structures aren't resilient enough to withstand these climatic events, then there's no use of being able to put all of this capital cost in. So maybe Chitra, it's also an area that we can also look into in having a building code specifically for renewable energy projects, in terms of procurement side of things. But for us, something that we did well in terms of wind energy was with the Japan's wind farm structure. So we can actually put these turbines down, during, like, let's say before, when we know that there's going to be a tropical cyclone coming in, we can put these structures down, and then we can conduct maintenance, etc. But the ones that we can't shift around, those are the ones that we really need to test out. And we actually have an upcoming 2.25 megawatt wind farm from the government of China. So we'll wait for the next tropical cyclone to see how reliable the this model is. Thank you. No,
I think
sure.
to wrap up the sessions, I just would like to have like one questions to each of the panelists, very short one. You can just answers in a very short manner. What would you think one key, a very important thing as the first priority enabler for private sector investment in clean energy in the Pacific? Maybe over to you. We start with Haran.
I think I'll borrow from Mike's guidance to us. I think the data behind the planning, the quality and the richness of that data, so that the right decision gets made and there are no surprises in store. I think that might be my top choice.
Mike?
Let's go down the line.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. So that one, and I think as it was said earlier, it's my idea, but it's very, very true that having the full support of the government and the off-taker is so critical, because even all of these other issues that we've been talking about in design, planning, financing, and other things, if you've got a commitment and partnership, collaborative approach, you can solve those things. Without that, it's inevitable that you'll run into problems. So,
thank you.
I also like to borrow from Mike as well. But like as mentioned earlier, that's the truth. That's the reality in our Pacific Islands. If we can't get the government to buy in, there's no future for this private investment. It's similar with our independent power producers. We had to continuously dialogue with government to be able to show them the benefits that comes out of this private sector involvement. But yes, I agree with from my previous two panelists on their point, Chitra. Thank you.
Ms. Inderina?
For Nauru, most of the public enterprises, they are government owned, and we don't really have like private investors in the country, but we may consider, like for example, fuel. We've outsourced the fuel before it was operated and managed by Nauru Utilities, and the government had to buy the fuel, but we managed and operated it. But maybe 8 years ago, we've outsourced fuel to a private company, Vital Energy, and they're the ones that are providing. So it can be an option that can be considered if the governments cannot provide for the people. Thank you.
Gibson?
Thank you. My only contribution to this question is that, once we used to have the carbon credit markets, and that was an incentive for utilities to move away from fossil fuel to renewable energy, because it was a displacement of fossil fuel. And I remember we used to do a lot of work just to satisfy the UNFCCC's guidelines. But recently I've been looking at the EFL annual report. The prices have gone down. And all that carbon credits that we have got is certified and it's still with us. Only a small percentage has been bought, coming to 27,000. When we first started the carbon credit market, the rate for a ton of carbon dioxide displaced was fantastic. And CFOs love this kind of, because they take it into the financial analysis of a project sometimes. But my only request, Madam, is maybe this forum should push for the reintroduction of carbon credit market. Because why? It's an incentive to the utility. It is also an incentive for the investor into RE, because someone is going to benefit from the displacement of fossil fuel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of the panelists for all of their insights. I think with that, we wrap up these sessions. Maybe if you could give applause to the panelists. Thank you. So I think like we close and this is the end of the sessions for today. Thank you.